First of all, I think your analysis was very straight line. History doesn't run in a straight line.
Kid, you cannot tell your neighbor he is stealing ducks when you are stealing funds.
As High Commissioner, I was wrong. As Charandas Prasad, I reacted naturally how any person would have.
I did not come here for that kind of abuse. I did not come here for that kind of abuse. If you're going to go down that road, I'll walk off.
But it's all okay once they're talking. If they were talking, I could not have been here today.
You got ADHD.
I got that.
Calm down.
I think I've done enough in terms of taking our team out of trouble from losing.
Come on, Lou Taylor. That's good. I'm reading the script now, and the first person that comes to my mind to play a detective,
Yes,
but
okay,
an
he's good too.
erratic
Mikhail
detective,
Rodriguez.
Mikhail Rodriguez.
Why an African slapping Indian? Why a man and slap a woman? Look, Gildarie, you deal with that. You deal with that.
We must encourage platforms like this because it brings together different people and allows for discussions to take place in our country on a multiplicity of fundamental issues.
Gildarie, you apologizing for something you think I did is wrong. I don't want you to do that, and you should not have done that.
Hi, good evening and welcome once again to the Gildarie Freddie Kissoon show. We also coming to you live on YouTube. Get it there on the Guyanese Critic page or Daybreak News. Wherever you are, whatever it is that you're doing, good night, good morning. I hope that you're staying safe, protecting yourself. If you're on the roadways listening to us, stay safe. Tonight, we have the developments that are happening, and that is going to take a greater part of our discussions and, of course, any other thing that comes up. Monday was Monday, June the 12th, local government elections, and what a surprise it's been throwing up. Aside from that, the fallouts, political fallouts, at least within one party, People's National Congress, lots to talk about here tonight because it was the analysts were basically looking at the 2023 elections as the stamping ground, as a setting, the stage, the setting the elections for 2025, constitution set for 2025. How did it fare? Well, that is what we'll be discussing tonight. We have in our midst here Commissioner Sase Gunraj of the Guyana Elections Commission, and he's no stranger. Not going to go through that. He's very well known in Guyana, attorney at law as well. Has a lot of years in his practice of law, but more so he's become known since the 2020 elections in a very big way for his outspoken way, but not only that, for his work at the Guyana Elections Commission. So I want to say welcome to our guest tonight, Commissioner Sase Gunraj, and of course to my co-host, Freddie Kissoon. We don't want to waste time. We want to make sure that the next hour that we spend on trying to analyze, get what is happening here. I have some questions for the Commissioner, and I would pass right over to Freddie Kissoon, who is going to get hang into things here, or get a hang of things rather. Freddie, good night to you, brother, and go right ahead.
Good night, good morning, good evening, based on time zone, wherever you are. I called our guest and I said to him, you were one of the earlier guests in this program almost a year ago. And people like you, have made the program a success, and we would like to have you back again. Now, Gildarie spoke about the profile Sase Gunraj achieved in the 2020 election, but one of the things that will always be remembered when the 2020 election is being discussed, that episode, that 5-month vortex, it is spoken, it comes up whenever the election, people reflect on that election. It's a commissioner of GECOM being ordered out of the command center by a person of lesser authority. That is not something that you see and hear around the world. This man is a GECOM commissioner, and somebody's telling a GECOM commissioner to leave. And that thing about Sase Gunraj being ordered out of the building will remain forever being discussed when March 2020 is talked about. But this evening we will talk about the LGE 2023. Because of his constitutional position, we will not be able to force him, although I don't know if Gildarie and I will try, into political discussion. But my first question to Sase is this thing about misinformation. Whenever there's an election, there's this thing about misinformation. And now in this election, there was some talk about GECOM banning cell phones. So Sase, why did you ban people's cell phones?
Good evening, Freddie. Good evening, Leonard. It's a pleasure to be back here, and I understand that you're almost 1 year in, so congratulations.
Yeah.
It has been very informative, and it actually gives something to the viewing public to look forward to in the evenings, because there is actually a void outside of the evening news on the various channels and so on. There is actually a void of this kind of analysis and this kind of interaction. But like you said, Leonard, we'll get right into it. You've asked about cell phones. Now,
that's about why you banned the people.
For the record, I did not ban cell phones, and I am a strong advocate. I am a very strong advocate for the use of cell phones, not only in the polling places, but generally. In fact, I'm happy to say that previously, pre-COVID, even having your cell phone on display in a courtroom was a no-no. Now, I don't want to say that those rules are relaxed, but there is some greater tolerance to the use of cell phones. In fact, now, even this morning, I had a matter before a judge, and someone appeared on the Zoom platform sitting in their car. I mean, while all of these, the use of technology must have some limits and must have some bounds, I think unnecessary restrictions must be spurned upon. And that issue at hand in relation to cell phones in the polling stations, it was a very horrid attempt to limit the use of those communication devices that have now almost become an extension of your person. And to say that persons were not allowed to use it, etc., was really a misinterpretation or a misapplication of the laws that deal with that. For the record, my perusal of the law does not in any way, shape, or has not in any way, shape, or form revealed that there is a prohibition on the use of cell phones or communication devices. And the very narrow mention of dissemination of information that is contained in a polling station, that the opposition commissioners sought to stretch to convert that into a ban on cell phones. Thankfully, in the final analysis, cell phones and the use thereof was allowed in the polling stations, but not before about 6 hours of commission discussion ensued on it. I want to say that all's well that ends well, but that is just a microcosm sometimes of the kind of discussions that we have at the commission.
And Freddie, I think that's pretty interesting, because we know how important the cell phone is to our lives, not only in Guyana but around the world. And there's very little, I think, if there was once upon a time, I think in Guyana, that people were fearful, at least in certain areas, in certain authorities, that you're going to use a cell phone to take a picture because you were being paid to give a vote in a particular area. And I think that was one of the fear of that. But you're right, everything has to be couched in the law. And if it isn't, then, and I think it's good to have the kind of discussion and have it thrown out, because the law, the 2020 election showed it very clearly there. Even the one word, people were able to use that and fight for it, But I'm glad to hear that.
And before I move on, Freddie, when you start the generality of your question on misinformation was then narrowed or restricted to the cell phone. But we have seen since the close of poll on Monday evening, we are now about 48 hours down the road. We have seen so much information and misinformation flowing that on elections night, I was privy through a network that I was exposed to a very wide set or collection of results. And when you look at those results, which were in the form of the official results of the elections, in the form of statements of poll, and you saw these wild statements being made on social media about a particular party won this municipality, or that party won this NDC. I don't know, and Freddie, you are the analyst, and I'll leave this aspect to you. But I don't know if that is part of political strategy to project a win, and then when, even in the absence of the real and credible results, and then when the real and credible results do not bear out that misinformation that was earlier peddled, then it creates it sets the stage to cast doubts on the electoral process. It casts doubts on the results that are real and accurate. I don't know if that's part of political strategy, but whatever it is, I believe that is disingenuous, it is dishonest, and it should be outlawed. As late as today, I saw information being peddled about the allocation of seats in the municipality of Georgetown. I don't know how greatly relieved I am to see subsequently that the purveyor of that information, a member of parliament no less, retracted it, and I can't remember if there was an apology. But sometimes by the time that retraction comes, the matter at hand, the misinformation, has gained so much public traction that the apology or if it's not an apology or the retraction, the damage has already been done. And those things ought not to be countenanced. They ought not to be countenanced, and the effect on the credibility of the process cannot be overstated.
Before you come in, because of protocol, he's a GECOM commissioner. He has to stay within certain protocol. But I was told and shown that quote-unquote misinformation emanated from Ganesh Mahipal. And Mahipal retracted it, but
I didn't read it, but in a sense,
Mahipal,
what he said that there was different.
Yes, he was saying a seat should have been given to someone because of the mathematical calculation, and that seat went to the PPP, and it was erroneous.
So Freddie, here is the issue here.
I think, without calling name, did I summarize it correctly?
Yes, you did.
So here is the issue here, and we've always spoken about, at least I've spoken about maturity when it comes to our people. I think the good commissioner would have made the point that you cannot understate the damage that you do to the psyche of the people when you put out those things, because they have expectation. Each one of the party, they have their followers, they have their supporters, and you put that out there, and then you see the situation change, and then somebody says, somebody joking it at GECOM. So we have to have responsible politicians in this country, responsible leaders. I'm not sure what's the end game, because if you come out and you say that the figures are such, and you use one constituency to project what is happening across the country, and then afterwards it's shown to be not that way, the damage has already been done, and that is the case. I was paying attention. Everybody,
the gentleman is a member of parliament.
Yeah, but that makes it even worse.
He's not some obscure figure.
Allow me to foray a little further on this issue of information and misinformation. I received the call. I rather suspect that this may be an issue that you'd want to raise later on in the program, but this dovetails right into what we're speaking about. I received a call from a senior state functionary last evening to question the dissemination of official results from the Guyanese Elections Commission. And this has been a very thorny issue for all of the years that I've been at the commission. The release of official results, the manner and frequency and timing in which those results are released. I know that the amendments that were made to the Representation of the People Act, which governs the conduct of general and regional elections, cater for the publication of statements of poll at some time very early in the process after the receipt by the returning officer, the chief election officer, and the chairman and commissioners. That section has not been replicated in the Local Government Elections Act 2803, which governs the conduct of the local government elections just concluded. However, the argument is, one of the factors to be considered is, when do you make those statements of poll or make those results available? As you see in these elections, the official results, which is the declaration by the returning officer in each of the 80 local authority areas, was posted to the GECOM's website, and that is the official results of the election. The argument or the discussion is, or has always been, whether you provide box by box results. One of the arguments against the provision of box by box results is the same issue that you spoke about a moment ago, Leonard, and that is to say, the public anxiety that is associated with that. And let's use the municipality of Georgetown, for example. The municipality of Georgetown extends from Agricola to Cummings Lodge. If you choose any one of those extremities of Agricola, of the city of Georgetown, and start to post results, it will demonstrate certain trends. Because let's be realistic. There are very clear and obvious voting trends that have remained fairly constant even in these last elections. We have seen them. Now, if you start to post election results from MacDoom, Agricola area, and start coming down, you will see a certain party in the lead. And as you come closer to Georgetown and the areas become mixed, etc., then you will see those trends changing. If you start from the other side, then it will be perhaps the opposite.
Yeah, Cummings Lodge. Now,
that is the public anxiety that I'm talking about. Because when someone looks and you start from Cummings Lodge, they say, hey, the PPP look like they win in Georgetown way, right? When you start from Agricola and coming down, you see, the PNC is winning Georgetown. But the reality is, it's a mixed bunch, as the eventual and total results of Georgetown has been. Now, there's a reason why statements of poll are put outside of polling stations. But those trends and to have those results published like that, box by box, like I said, one of the reasons I believe that it is not done on a wholesale official, in a wholesale official manner, is to calm or assuage, or to avoid rather, that public anxiety that is associated with it. Now, when you have persons as early as 8 o'clock, when clearly some results are now coming in, etc., making calls and making declarations and saying that a party has won this LA or a party has won that LA, it causes that public anxiety, and I believe sometimes it is deliberately done.
But the sad thing about that, Commissioner and Freddie, is that the people who are doing it are leaders, and maybe even me, the personnel who are respected or at least have a
look what happened in March 2020.
Right. And so this is something we got to be a little mature and be responsible. I think that's what the story. But I want to bring it very quickly to one of the themes that came out of this election, and the coverage of it is who won. Personally, I think you would have to look at several areas there. Did the country win? Was there a good voter turnout compared to the other years? And I want to bring you to that. Do we have any numbers at this moment which show you a comparison, whether there was a rise in the number of voters, or how does GECOM view that, and how could you give us the guidance along that?
Presently, as I'm presently advised, there is no official information about turnout of voters. Mm-hmm. Any information about turnout of voters at this stage will only be based on a visual expression or visual apprehension that persons would have made on elections day. Well, we didn't see crowds, or we didn't see, long lines at polling stations as we are accustomed to. And I don't want to hazard a guess why that is so, but worldwide, I believe the trend for municipal and gubernatorial elections is that the turnout and the response by the electorate is not as great when compared to national or regional elections as we have in Ghana, general or regional elections. And this is something that happens even in the United States. The turnout at presidential elections is much greater than the other elections, and every year the US has elections on that statutory date. But that being said, I believe the numbers in 2016 and 2018 were in between 35 and 45% in that range. Mm-hmm. The provision of that statistical information, particularly for local government elections in Guyana, is basically for statistical or academic reasons only, because it will require a concatenation of all of the results of the 80 local authority areas, and then look at the total number of registered electors, etc., and to look at that turnout. Mm. For the local government elections, that is not necessary, because each local authority is responsible for itself insofar as each local authority has its own election, basically. And that declaration and the assignment of seats by that returning officer, almost all of which are published on the GECOM website now, mm-hmm. is the end of that. That is of course, subject to recounts, etc., some of which are currently ongoing, but that is the final result.
But let me ask Freddie, you're the analyst here. If that number, which the commissioner said, about 40% or so, dropped to about 30%, what does that mean as an analyst who's looking at whether the government of the day, whether the opposition has been able to call out the supporters for something? Because surely the local government elections of 2023 has to be the stage or the setting for what comes in 2025. Yes, the numbers are going to be low, but when it comes to having those figures drop 2 years before an election, which is going to be so very critical, 2025, in the midst of oil boom.
I'm going to decline your question for reason of protocol. I want to give Sase. I don't want to take over Sase's role. I know the question is important, but I'm kind of uncomfortable taking a 2, 3, 4 minutes and there's so much our guest has to say, and I want to ask him about a word Vincent Alexander used. The word he used, he was quoted as using the word pandemonium in the command center at 11 p.m. the night. He gave his reason. He said he was a commissioner for 18 years and he'd never seen what he saw. Are you aware that he was saying that something with the 15 deputy returning officer, they had to do something and they were not allowed to do that. Instead, the returning officer, a whole set of things he said. But was there pandemonium in the command center on Monday at 11 p.m.?
Freddie, on Monday at 11 p.m., I was not at the command center. Well, it would not be a command center. Critchlow Labour College is the office, the official office of the returning officer for the municipality of Georgetown. And I saw in the media 1 or 2 reports that there was some disquiet at the. Now, I am not attempting to substitute the word disquiet for pandemonium or anything.
Alexander said pandemonium.
Right? And I was not there. I don't know if he was there. And if he is describing it as such, I would hope that he was there. But that being said, I could tell you what the law requires to happen at the office of the returning officer after the polls close. And 11 o'clock in the evening would mean that is sometime after the polls have closed. After the polls have closed and the ballots are counted in those polling stations, the official result is generated in the form of a statement of poll. The law dictates what has to happen with those statements of poll. Those statements of poll, the first one is posted in a conspicuous place outside of the polling station, and then copies, which by law are deemed to be original, are then forwarded, one to the chief election officer, one to the returning officer, and in the new in the amendments to ROPA, the Representation of the People Act, the chairman and commissioners get their own copy. Now, at Critchlow, that is where the office of the RO is situated. There are 15 constituencies in the municipality of Georgetown, and Georgetown has the largest number of constituencies. It has the largest number of polling stations. It is the largest local authority area in all that elections were held in. And my understanding was, upon inquiry, is that persons were the presiding officers whose responsibility it was to transmit those packets containing the statements of poll to the returning officer. There was some delay which caused the disquiet. To say that there was pandemonium, etc., I would not be able to comment on that because I obviously was not there.
Okay. Did you see anything on Monday that led you to believe that some people in the political arena was up to mischief? Did you see any polling station? And it was quickly nipped in the bud?
Unless you're asking me something specific, Freddie, I don't recall seeing anything.
Okay.
If there's a specific incident that you'd like me to comment on, I'd be happy to do so within the length of my cable.
No, it's a general question.
However, all of my comments, and I made several public comments on Monday, from as early as 5 minutes past 6 to as late as 8 p.m. And that is after observing almost every aspect of the election day activity, from the opening of the containers in which ballot boxes were pre-staged to be sent to the polling stations, to the opening of polls, pre-opening of polls, opening of polls, conduct of polls, dispatch of the discipline services ballots to the specific polling stations within the constituencies to which they belong, intermixing, closing of poll, counting of the ballots, posting of the statements of poll, and dispatch to the returning officers. All of those aspects, and I think I've covered the entirety of the polling day activity. In all of the stations that I observed, and these various aspects were observed at various parts between regions 3 and 4. I did not observe any major issue. All of the issues that I observed, and very sporadic, very few, were quickly rectified. There was a very elaborate team of supervisors for clusters of polling stations, supervisors who I'm trying to remember and get it right. I can't recall whether the supervisors reported to the DROs, the deputy returning officers, or vice versa. But there were various administrative layers that were put in place to ensure that the polling stations themselves operated in an efficient and functional manner. And for example, at one place there was an issue with a stamp that broke during the conduct, the 6-digit stamp. And almost within minutes, I saw that stamp being replaced. Now, that for me augured well for the operation of the system, and I was happy to see that, because those are not unforeseen issues. I mean, if I heard that 500 stamps broke, I'd get worried. But seeing a stamp breaking in the process and seeing it replaced so quickly, I felt good about the process and the conduct of it.
You know what the commission is saying here, Freddie and Freddie, the 2020 elections, if you look at it, it's very clear that GECOM has the systems in place to run elections because it was smooth. The madness started happening in the night. So it means that if you have people in the system who has the will and who has intentions to really do something, that is where it's unforeseen, and you can't really cater for that. I mean, we now know what the 2020 election would have brought. But that is interesting, and I think this election's LG has reflected what happened in 2020. Voting day, March 2nd, went smoothly until
very smoothly.
But what came out, some of the results that came out is pretty interesting. The PPP would be crowing about some of the gains that they would have made. They went in Georgetown, which is one of the areas, Georgetown, New Amsterdam, Linden, they would have been paying close attention to. Georgetown, they increased the number of seats from 6 to 11. New Amsterdam, they got 6 out of the 14 seats. And these are what they would have seen as traditionally PNC strongholds. Bartik is a tie, and Bartik traditionally went to the PNCR. And the Linden, I think the number of seats went up to 4 for the PPP. Freddie, again, I would put that question to you. Would you say this is a win for the PPP, or would you say what does it mean? What does the figures mean?
You're putting me in a position.
Yes, I have to.
I have to discuss political questions with a constitutional office holder here. And,
I can sit and listen, Freddie. It's
yes.
fine.
No, you're our
be
guest.
interested in
No, you're our guest. You have to observe protocol. I will turn my reaction into a question for Sase. I don't know if he has the authority to comment on it, but I heard the Vice President said it's an election issue. I don't know if that's outside of his remit. I think the Vice President said in one polling station, the presiding officer, and he was careful not to attribute any wrongdoing or mischief to him. He said that he gave some legitimate voters a ballot that is not count. You will know what a ballot is. They don't count that. Has that been corrected or looked into?
So we have a category of ballots that are called tendered ballots.
Yes, it's tendered ballots. He said
The genesis or the origin of tendered ballots was a sort of a placebo meant to console or placate a voter. And I believe this was an introduction into the system many years ago, long before my entry into the as a member of GECOM. And it was meant to placate a voter who came and did not find his name on a voter's list or for whatever other reason was not entitled to vote at that polling station. The reason I call it a placebo is because it is not counted. While it may have all of the similar contents of a ballot that you would mark or I would mark, it has a different color, it is marked tendered ballot, and it is not counted when the results, it does not form part of the results. It is not counted at the end of the process. For as long as I have been at the Guyana Elections Commission, tendered ballots have only been used either by error, only in error, or through inadvertence by presiding officers. Let me give you some of the examples. In the morning when the polls are open, you have the tendered ballots as part of the supplies that are made available to the presiding officer. You have the regular ballots and so on. And which I think happened in the incident that was referred to by the Vice President. The presiding officer opens, starts to issue ballots, and then there are only a few, probably 4 or 5 tendered ballots in every box, then realizes, oh no, it was tendered ballots that we were giving out. But by that time, you have long voted, stained your finger and gone. There is no way of pulling that back. There is no way of reversing that process. So literally, your vote went on a tendered ballot, and that tendered ballot obviously is not counted. Now, I don't want to deliberate too much on this because I believe it's a live issue that may require some sort of determination in the very, very near future. That notwithstanding, the amendments to the Representation of the People Act, which once more governs the general regional election, removes the tendered ballot from the legal regime. You'll no longer have tendered ballots there. You'll no longer have tendered ballots printed. So hopefully out of necessity, that eliminates that issue of tendered ballots.
But that's interesting,
right? However,
so there will be no tendered ballots.
There'll be no tendered ballots. Now, I can't recall what year tendered ballots were introduced in our electoral regime. However, by now, people are people are so civic-minded about our electoral process that they know when they're being handed a tendered ballot. And if it has lost its ability to serve as a placatory or a consolation to a voter, because in fact, if a voter is already enraged that he can't vote there or something, and you're now handing him something that he knows clearly, instead of it calming him, it has the in my opinion, it will have the opposite effect of further aggravating him or her. So the tendered ballots are completely removed. In fact, we had this discussion prior to the preparation of sensitive materials for these elections, and my personal vote was for the removal or non-printing of the tendered ballot. However, it exists as part of our legal and statutory regime, and as a consequence, the Commission decided that we will continue and proceed with it because it's there in the law. But I can see
it won't be there in 2025.
It will not be there in 2025.
So there's a piece of news that the journalism should pick up. I didn't know that. I think wouldn't this be the first time that is being revealed that they wouldn't be? It wasn't in the news. But let's move on. I don't want to bring out things you cannot bring out in GECOM. Would you want to talk about biometrics? Is there any possibility that will be accepted in the endless discussions among the seven of you?
But Freddie, when we speak of biometrics, once again it comes down to a matter of interpretation. I am of the firm view, and I have said this already, I'm on public record as saying this, that we already employ the use of biometrics.
Through the ID card?
We already employ the use of biometrics in our electoral system. When you present yourself to be registered as a voter, you are required to provide to the Guyana Elections Commission a complete set of your fingerprints. Those fingerprints, before you are committed to our National Register of Registrants, before you are committed, your fingerprints, the fingerprints of that applicant for registration, is cross-matched with our entire database, and the fingerprints are unique as possible to one person. And it is one of the standard biometrics that is used worldwide. In fact, it is the most pervasively used biometric worldwide. So when you are fingerprinted, before you are committed to the National Register of Registrants, your fingerprints are cross-matched against all of the other persons on that National Register of Registrants. And that is not done internally by GECOM. That is done by an external service provider overseas, specifically for the purposes of quality control, in the integrity of the process, etc. And it is only after that you have passed that hurdle or cross that may satisfy that requirement that you are registered. Now, at every registration cycle, we have cross matches. We have matches. We have incidents where someone might have registered before and come for registration again. We have all sorts of incidents, and then the report shows that we are able to weed out that double registration, etc. So to say that we need to introduce biometrics into our electoral system, I don't believe is a very honest or a very intelligent statement, because of course we have the use of we have already employed, and this has been ongoing for over 15 years.
You're going to mash some people down by it's not an intelligent request.
No, I think what you really
you're going to mash some people.
Are you asking?
I'm talking about the opposition.
No, you see, Freddie, we sometimes we speak to create song bites for certain ears without giving due credence to what reality is. And it's nice to speak fast and loose about the need for biometrics and so on. But in truth and in fact, we have employed biometrics and are currently using biometrics as part of our electoral process.
Is there any move, Commissioner, before 2025 to start the process of introducing, I think, is it digital voting?
Digital voting and biometrics, as you know, are two very different things.
Yes.
And as I am presently circumstanced, I can tell you that there is no discussion at the Commission regarding digital voting.
Thank you very much.
But why would we want that in a country where only half of a million people are registered to vote?
Speedy delivery of results. There's been the arguments for that. Speedier delivery.
It's open to manipulation.
It is, but like so many other things.
But you also have to take into consideration, Leonard, that a lot of the jurisdictions that have anything that is outside of paper ballots and paper balloting, you have to take into consideration several factors. And voting, or the electoral process, I've been using this word almost ad nauseum recently, has a requirement of universality. We can't vote here using paper ballots, and then at the next polling station you use machines, and at the other one you use show of hands. It has to be a universal process throughout. And you have to take into consideration connectivity. You have to take into consideration the terrain. In 2020, we had 2,339 polling stations. I can't tell you that the circumstances, the facilities, and the connective facilities, including connectivity, sometimes facilities including electricity is available. Earlier on this program, I spoke about the swift response. I was going to say rapid response, but the swift response to some of the issues. In the Eccles-Ramsburg Neighborhood Democratic Council, in the area of Republic Park Phase 1, it was intended, because there are no public buildings, etc. there, for many elections, balloting was conducted under a tent. But remember, early on Monday morning, we had some showers. A decision was taken to move that over to Eccles Nursery School, close by, in line of sight. And now, I've mentioned that to highlight my earlier point about the response to dynamics on elections day. But that tent does not have connectivity. It does not have electricity. Everything there is made available via lamps, etc. Now, that is in a populated area. It is within the coastline. It's an area where, and I'm not saying that these facilities are not available and cannot be available, but you want to ensure the universality of facilities when you're factoring. You want to factor that in when you're having this discussion about any different system to be implemented.
As a commissioner, are you happy with? Would you say that it is reasonable the delivery of those results that happened the next day within that time frame? Something like local government, would you say that was reasonable, that was good? Are you happy with it?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. The delivery of the results was not inordinately long, but I know your next question, and pardon my anticipation of it. I know your next question, or the question of any reasonable person will be, why can this not be replicated in general regional elections? The system of elections in local government has some differences and some nuances to the conduct of general regional elections. When we touched on the issue of turnout, we spoke about that. That in general regional elections, you have to have all of the results in before you can make that declaration. Unlike in the local government elections, when you can declare Georgetown, or you can declare Nile Koja, or you could declare any other local authority area different from the rest.
Interesting. Freddie, so before we come, I hand over to Freddie there. Some of the news that came out of this elections on Monday, and if you haven't been paying attention, Simona Brooms, former minister within the Ministry of Natural Resources, James Bond, and even some social media people calling, at least Simona was extremely harsh in her criticism of Aubrey Norton as the lead of the leader of the PNCR, with getting off the blocks a little too late, and she made comparisons to how Jagdeo's as the leader, the general secretary of the PPP, was having several press conferences, and there was an absence of Aubrey Norton, and James Bond was calling for serious introspection within the party there. But some other persons within the social media sphere was a little more frontal rather, calling for the removal of Aubrey Norton. Pretty interesting, and I think we should be seeing, ladies and gentlemen, some developments maybe for the leadership. In fact, I saw today that there has been a major push within at least some circles within the PNCR for, I think it is Nigel Hughes, attorney at law, to be the next presidential candidate. Let's see where that goes. Freddie Kissoon?
Sase, can I ask you to put your hand on your head and take off your GECOM commissioner hat? Could you do it for me, please? Because you have been a long-standing practicing lawyer, and people watching you will want your views on laws, the importance of constitutional amendment, the importance of the CCJ, and those kind of things. So I see you taking off your GECOM commissioner hat, so thank you. How far has constitutional amendment gone, and how far has are you satisfied with the amendments to ROPA? I know one of the amendments to ROPA is that Region 4 would not have one tabulation center anymore.
Well, as you know, to answer your last question first, Freddie, the amendments to ROPA were done through a consultative process. The amendments were made available to all the stakeholders, a wide range of stakeholders. I interrogated those amendments in my personal capacity, and we also looked at those amendments at the level of the Guyana Elections Commission. There were consultations in which we participated publicly and privately in relation to those amendments, and I think there are maybe one or two small kinks that are currently in ROPA, but by and large, I am satisfied with the totality of the amendments in ROPA. You asked also about constitutional amendments and I don't know if you said constitutional reform.
Yeah.
But constitutional amendments and constitutional reform. Like Roper, I believe that our constitution is fairly comprehensive when it comes to addressing, and in fact, our constitution, I believe, is very advanced insofar as it relates to a lot of the rights and privileges, etc., that are contained therein for good governance and so on. And we also speak to inclusive governance, but then there are so many mechanisms that are contained in the constitution to ensure the participation by all stakeholders in the governance and of the country. And this is something that outside of the executive, in the legislative sphere, you have all of these rights commissions, many of which are now active. You have service commissions that require bipartisan parliamentary processes to have persons nominated and serve on those commissions. You have a public procurement commission that serves as a watchdog, and all coming out of the Constitution. Now, some people believe that constitutional reform requires or relates to the wholesale adoption of a brand new document. But the slew of changes, you'd recall the very elaborate constitutional reform process that we had in 2001. Periodically, there have been changes to include these various safeguards for the benefit of the citizens generally. And incrementally and gradually, there have been so many changes in the Constitution. That is constitutional reform in itself. But even as that stands, we see that I believe the constitutional reform bill or legislation, I don't know if I'm quoting the name of the act correctly, but there's a bill that has been introduced to the Parliament, and I think it has been passed into law to put some structure to this process. There's also parliamentary committees that exist also to ensure its greater participation outside of the executive solely in the running and management of the country. So when we speak of constitutional reform, it is often very good to consider all of these incremental and gradual changes that have occurred over the years in that regard.
No, keep the commissioner hat on the ground there. Let me ask some more political questions. You think you see any prospect after serving so long in GECOM and being in the limelight? You see any? Hitler and Goring were out in a boat, and Hitler looked at the water and said, "Let me test this thing." He wanted to walk on water. They say Jesus walked on water. I'm not a religious person. You ever felt you want to test this thing? You know what I mean by that? Entry into politics?
Freddie, your ensnaring questions always seem to come at the end. That may be a signal that we are close to or out of time.
Yeah.
My desire is always to serve. My desire is always
politicians
to serve.
Of the nation.
No, but that is exactly what I'm going to say. My desire is always to serve the people of my country, and in any way, shape, or form that I'm required to serve, I will do the same. When I was nominated to GECOM 8+ years ago, I viewed it in a very similar and like vein, that it is an opportunity to serve, and I would not sit here and seek to judge the manner or the efficiency of my service. But I'd like to think that it was a manner of service, and in any opportunity or any capacity that I'm required to serve, that has always been at the forefront of my thoughts.
You know, that is a very sophisticated legal evasion of my question. You have put your legal experience there at work, but it has not defeated me. So I'm going to ask you, using the argument of the existential choice that humans have, I am asking you, and let me see if you're gonna BS me with your legal mind again. Are you getting a feeling, however remote, that I'd like to go into formal politics? Now let me see how you answer that without the legal circuitous thing.
Politics and entry into politics, Freddie, is like I said, all politicians are servants to the people.
Gildarie, this is an example of legal evasion. This is a denunciation of grammar and a preponderance of legal evasion. Over to you.
Providing service, whether it's at GECOM, providing service whether it's in a political office, providing service as a lawyer, providing service as a volunteer, are all nuances of service. And when service is the foundation upon which your actions rest, it is just a matter of form.
Gildarie, I'm going to ask you a question.
Our time is up.
Did he answer that question?
As you said, that he evaded it. But that's your opinion.
What's your opinion?
Ladies and gentlemen, as always, it's been a pleasure having Commissioner Sase Gunraj. Speaking with him, it's been a pleasure. And of course, Freddie Kissoon, although he evaded some questions tonight too. But that
I avoided.
He avoided, he said.
He evaded.
Personally, for me, the local government elections, I would like to see, and I wish that I could have gotten in that question to the good commissioner with regards to civic and voters' education, whether the political parties and whether the country should not be playing a bigger role in letting the people know. I have a feeling that people are not aware of the importance of the local government election. Freddie Kissoon, the importance of local government elections, and we lost a very good opportunity in more people not being able to come out, and I think that should change in later days, because that's where we like leaders within your community who are going to be able to deliver the essential services. That being the case, interesting discussion tonight. We'll continue to analyze those figures and see the fallouts politically that come as a result of LG 2023. Would like, on behalf of myself and Freddie Kissoon, extend our gratitude to Commissioner Sase Gunraj, who's given us time. We know how busy he is to appear on our program here. And I want to say good night to you folks. Thank you for listening. I saw we have our listeners have a lot of humor, and they're saying that fortunately for this elections, no Russians have appeared out of anywhere, not from the Atlantic Ocean or anywhere. Stay safe on the roadway. We can be back with you on Friday. Thank you very much, Commissioner. Thank you very much, Freddie Kissoon. Take care.